teacher, Brother Rashid Siniata. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, very briefly, I've been teaching African American history in the city of Pittsburgh for the better part of 20, 25 years. Taught several generations of people.
Yes.
And I'm very proud of all of those who came through the school of Sundiata.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And the brother is excellent, excellent. If you get the opportunity to take a class from him or a workshop, if you hear about one, please do attend. You'll never be the same. Okay, and we have our resident historian, our very own brother Kaka Bruce Barnes. Bruce, you want to give us a little bit of history about yourself?
Okay, my name is Bruce Barnes, but I'm known in the community as Kaka. I'm from Homewood originally, when Homewood was a neighborhood, when it was a community. Now it's just a hood because there's no neighbors. But I'm a retired city planner. I worked for the city of Pittsburgh in the planning department for 35 years. And everything I've learned about our history, I had to learn myself. I never have had a black history course. I've just read on my own and learned many different things that way. So everything I learned, even though I went to an all-black elementary school, Crescent, I went to an all-black junior high school, Westinghouse, and I went to a HBCU, Lincoln University, the first HBCU, and I've never had a black or African history class. Now, usually I rock the HBCUs, but today I'm rocking the Rock, Slippery Rock, and I want to give some shout outs to my Slippery Rock folks, Charlie Hart, Jennifer B. Williams, Art Collier. Those are some of my Slippery Rock folks. I want to give a shout out to you guys.
My granddaughter.
Okay. Your granddaughter goes there now?
Deal Moore, yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Right on, right on.
So I'm rocking the Rock today.
All right.
Usually I rock the HBCUs, but
Well, it's all good. They're in a higher education. That's always good.
true.
So we're going to start, if you turn to page 40 in the book, with a poem called Renegade. This poem was written by Robert Hayden. He was born August 4th, 1913, left this earth February 25th, 1980. He was born in Detroit, Michigan, died in Ann Arbor, was an American poet, essayist, and educator. He served as a consultant in poetry to the Library of Congress from 1976 to 78, a role today known as the U.S. Poet Laureate. He was the first African-American writer to hold this office. Sister Lorraine is going to read a poem called Renegade, and we're going to discuss it when she completes it.
Robert Hayden, Renegade, Renegade. Runs, falls, rises, stumbles on, from darkness into darkness, and the darkness thickens with shapes of terror, and the hunters pursuing, and the hounds pursuing, and the night cold, and the night long, and the river to cross, and the jackmule lanterns beckoning, and the blackness ahead. And when shall I reach that somewhere? Morning, and keep on going, and never turn back, and keep on going. Renegade, renegade, renegade. Many thousands rise and go, many thousands crossing over. O mythic north, O star-shaped yonder Bible city. Some go weeping, some rejoicing, some in coffins, some in carriages, some in silks and some in shackles. Rise and go, or fare you well. No more auction block for me, no more driver's lash for me. If you see my Pompey, 30 years of age, new breeches, plain stockings, Negro shoes. If you see my Anna, likely young mulatto branded E on the right cheek or on the left, catch them if you can and notify subscriber. Catch them if you can, but it won't be easy. They'll dart underground when you try to catch them, plunge into quicksand, whirlpools, masses, torn into scorpions when you try to catch them. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. North Star and Bonanza Gold, I'm bound for the freedom, freedom bound. And oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. Renegade, renegade. Rises from their anguish, their power. Harriet Tubman, woman of earth, whip-scarred, a summoning, a shining, mean to be free. And this was the way of it, brethren. Brethren, way we journey from cant to can. Moon so bright and no place to hide. The cry up and the paddle rollers riding. Hound dogs bellowing and bladed ear. And fear starts a murmuring. Never make it. We'll never make it. Hush that now. And she turned upon us. Level pistol glittering in the moonlight. Dead folks can't jaybird talk. She says, you keep on going now or die, she says. Want it. Harriet Tubman, alias the General, alias Moses, stealer of slaves, in a league with Garrison, Elcott, Emerson, Garrett, Douglas, Thoreau, John Brown, armed and known to be dangerous. Wanted, reward, dead or alive. Tell me, Ezekiel, oh tell me, do you see? Mailed Jehovah coming to deliver me? Hoot owl, calling in ghosted ear, 5 times calling to the haunts in the ear. Shadow of a face in the scarry leaves, shadow of a voice in the talking leaves. Come a ride of my train. Oh, that train, ghost story train, through swamp and savannah, moving, over trestles of dew, through caves of the wish. Midnight special on a sunbreak track, moving, first stop, and the last hallelujah. Come a ride of my train, mean to be free.
Harriet Tubman,
Yeah.
pistol toting sister.
She was pistol packing.
Pistol
Did
packing.
anybody see the movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Harriet?
Yes.
What did you think about it?
I enjoyed it.
I wasn't.
Did you hear any of the criticism before you went
I
to
did.
the movie?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What did you think about the criticism? Was it just
Well, I guess it's everybody's interpretation of what they thought, their perception, because I didn't see it as though the slave owner was the hero, and that there was another slave that was a bounty hunter for slaves, which did occur. I mean,
Yes.
there was those, and even till today, will give you up, and so, that wasn't nothing unusual. The whole thing to me was that it wasn't a documentary, it wasn't a biography, it was sort of like,
Fiction.
yeah, pieces. I mean, there was some truth in there, but it wasn't displayed to be that. It was supposed to be.
they didn't Hollywoodize it too much?
No, and then I didn't
was
want to
good.
see I already seen the beatings and the anguish of slavery. I already seen that. So this made her more
Compassionate.
Personal.
I would have
Yeah.
loved to seen a stronger sister. To me, she portrayed not a revolutionary sister. She didn't portray a strong sister to me. To me,
No.
because she didn't pull that trigger in the end, she was weak. She had the chance to shoot a man that raped her mother, her sister, and probably her. And then killed a black man in her face, even though he was trying to kill her. Nevertheless, when I'm turned on somebody, I couldn't let that go. Did she kill anybody in the movie? Harriet.
Well, did Harriet Tubman actually shoot him? Did she actually shoot that man?
What man?
That you were saying that she...
The white man?
Yeah, the white man. Did she actually shoot him?
No, she shot him in the hand, I think, but she could have killed him. I think she should have killed
Well,
him.
so are you saying Harriet was weak too because she didn't do
And that's
that?
what I'm saying. I think she was portrayed as being weak.
No, but I'm saying, but being that she didn't actually shoot.
I don't know what she actually
Okay,
did.
all
I
right.
can't say what she
What she
actually
means in
did.
the movie, the fact that she
Yeah.
didn't shoot him.
Yeah, I know
Is
it.
that
I know.
why
Wasn't
you're
drawing-
saying-
since
Yeah, I
it
know
was a
that.
dramatization. Come on, let's make her strong. Let's make her real. Let's make her revolutionary for real.
Well, the big problem is we have to really be dubious of getting our history through Hollywood.
Period.
Hollywood's the worst place for our history because Hollywood's been waging a centuries-long war on our people and our culture, beginning in 1915 with Birth of a Nation. So they're not going to show you. They'll show you all the brutality
Right.
against black people, whether it's slavery or anything else, but they won't show you black folks waging violence against white people. Because that has to go through the censors of Hollywood. And the idea is we have to market this show, this movie, to as many people as possible. And white folks don't want to see their people being killed by black people. Right? And a whole lot of us get a little squeamish too, because we in denial as well.
Well, what was that other movie? Django? Was it Django?
Django kind of broke the mold.
Didn't.
That's Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, that broke the mold.
And that's why he'll never win an Oscar. Did you see Set It Off?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't see
You see that the same kind of situation happened at the end of that movie, where I don't know if it was Queen Latifah had to drop on the cop that killed her friend's brother, and she didn't pull the trigger either.
No.
Yeah.
But this poem there was a couple things that caught my eye in this poem, where they say, before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. I've heard that before. I didn't know that was part of this.
Right.
The other thing that hit me on page 42 was the patty rollers. So now I see where that term comes from. I've heard, where they call them the rollers or the patty rollers. I've heard this term. I've never seen it before in any poetry. Now I see one of the sources of this term.
Yeah, and even though Susanna, don't you cry for me?
Yeah, I saw that in
school.
We had to learn that in school.
I came from Alabama with the banjo on my knee.
Yes, we had to learn that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And Stephen Foster,
Yeah, that was his song.
was that one of the songs that he appropriated?
Appropriated?
Yes,
Probably so.
because he didn't write those songs. He just appropriated those songs.
Yeah. Yeah, we do have to quit looking to Hollywood, but you just have to, if you go see it, if you take a child, you're just going to have to tell them the truth before you go. This is a dramatization.
Correct.
And that's what it is, though I didn't like it. So our next poem is by Margaret Essie Danner. Now, she's one of the unsung poets that I researched. She was a companion to Langston Hughes for a while. And actually, Bruce introduced me to this poet through one of his TV programs. We were looking through some of his collectibles, and out comes an album called Writers of the Revolution. And it was Margaret Danner and Langston Hughes. So she was born in Priorsburg, Kentucky, died in Chicago, was an American poet, editor, and activist. She was the first African-American assistant editor at Poetry Magazine. She collaborated with Langston Hughes on an album called Writers of the Revolution and a publication with Dudley Randolph called Poem Counterpoem. Danner served as poet in residence at Wayne State University and Lemoyne-Owen College and received the John Hay Whitney Fellowship, the Harriet Tubman Award, the Poets in Concert Award, and the African Studies Association Award. The University of Chicago holds a selection of her papers.
See, that's another problem. Everybody else holding our papers. So when our scholars need to go do some research, you got to go to somebody else and get permission to look up your own history.
Yeah, well, I think Toni Morrison's work is at where? Is it Harvard?
Wow.
Yeah, I think one of those elite Ivy League schools.
How come I'm not surprised?
Well, it's probably, she was a professor. Wasn't she a professor there?
Yeah,
So,
well, she's a Howard alum.
Howard alum? Okay.
We're going to leave it to Howard.
Yeah.
She said she wanted them to be well taken care of.
Oh, well.
Well, I can understand that because John Henry Clark, when he passed, he donated his library to Clark Atlanta. And some years later, people were stealing the books out of the library and selling them on eBay.
Wow.
So that's why I worry about what to do with my 5,000 collection, 5,000 books. I don't know where to leave them. And I talked to Tony Browder about that and Dr. Charles Finch. What do they plan to do with their papers? All the information that they have. So we talked about that, and I said we need a repository. That's like a reference library. You can go in there and you can live in there, but you can't take nothing out.
Right.
So that our scholars can have research in our own papers and have access to our information without having to go through somebody else and paying money to do so.
So this poem is called The Slave and the Iron Lace by Margaret Essie Danner. The craving of Samuel Rouse for clearance to create was surely as hot as the iron that buffeted him. His passion for freedom so strong that it molded the smoldering fashions he laced. For how, also, could a slave plot or counterplot such incomparable shapes from ore reform for house after house? The intricate patio pattern, the delicate rows in layer, the debutante settee, the complex but famous grape, frame the classic vein in an iron bench. How could he turn an iron Venetian urn, wind the grapevine, chain the trunk of a pine with a round the tree settee, mold a floating flower tray, a French chair, create all this in such exquisite fairyland taste that he'd be freed, and his skill would still resound 100 years after. And I wonder if I, with this thick asbestos glove of an attitude, could lace, forge, and blend the ton of lead chain spleen surrounding me. Could I manifest and sustain it into new free-form screen of not necessary love, but at the very least for all concerned, grace.
Wow.
So that was The Slave in an Iron Lace. And that was Margaret Essie Danner's poem. Now, I never, I think it's beautiful, but the fact that then, when you think about it, you find out, oh yeah, slaves were hired out.
Mm-hmm.
Slaves were hired out to work. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's one way in which many of our people who got freedom gained their freedom. We tend to think of slaves as just cotton pickers, low-skilled labor. But the Southern economy was built by the hands of skilled black labor, right? And so if you had a slave or slaves who had carpentry skills, masonry skills, whatever skills that were required for construction in particular, you would hire them out. That's how the White House got built. That's how the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. got built by skilled slave labor that was hired out. It's like rent a slave. Yeah. And so you go out and work, your master would hire you out, and let's say you got $15, like Robert Smalls, when his master hired him out, he got $15, the master took $14, and he kept $1. So the more you work, you accumulate your money with the idea that you're going to buy your freedom. Now, Robert Smalls, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but Robert Smalls took his money and bought candy, tobacco, cigarettes, and sold it to the dock workers to multiply his earnings. And he was able to purchase his freedom and his wife's freedom. He didn't purchase his wife's freedom. No, he's in the process of doing that when they decided to take the planter and steal away. But that's how you got free, one way. Okay. Denmark Vesey was a skilled laborer, right? I know that. And he actually played the East Bay Lottery and hit for $1,500.
Excuse me?
Yeah, Denmark Vesey
what year was this?
1800.
And they had the lottery?
Yeah, they had the lottery. He hit the East Bay Lottery for $1,500. Yeah,
I'm trying to hit the lottery now.
Yeah, he hit for $50. That's a lot of money back then. It was a lot of money now.
$1,500. Wow.
Yeah, he bought himself for $600, and he wanted to buy his wife and children, but the man who owned them wouldn't sell them. And that's really like the roots of his rebellion against slavery. Oh, right. There was some other things going on, but yeah, he was a skilled carpenter. So you had skilled laborers. Frederick Douglass was a skilled laborer in Baltimore. He worked in shipbuilding.
Right.
So yeah,
it's pretty amazing. And in this poem, she questions herself. I like that part when she wonders if she could even think about having that much passion. She doesn't even feel it that much. She makes something that's beautiful. You're enslaved. How are you making something with such beauty?
Yeah. But you know what? That's very important though, because slavery itself, the slave system, defined our people as less than human. Right? There is no beauty in you. There is nothing of value in you. We had to have self-value. We had to define ourselves as beautiful, right? And we still have to do that. We're still up under that same problem, right?
Yes.
So that was the whole thing. That was our maintaining our humanity. And it's important because as I teach slavery in the classroom, I have to keep in mind we're dealing with a humiliated people. Right, we're still suffering under the problem of humiliation and shame. So when a lot of times people say, I don't want to hear that slavery talk or see any slavery movies, it's beating them down. But if you understand the power of the human being overcoming that, it's beautiful. It's inspiring and it empowers you. You know, don't just focus on the whips and the chains. Focus on how we overcame that.
And we still here.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Denmark Vesey because you know that church where Dylan Roof killed the 9 people that church was founded by Denmark Vesey. And my wife was Gullah, and she was from Edisto Island, right off the coast of Charleston. And her and I visited that church. So when I saw on TV which church it was, I knew immediately that it had something to do with Denmark Vesey. That Dylan Roof picked that date because it was the anniversary of the rebellion that Denmark Vesey wanted to start. So that wasn't an accident. He didn't just happen to walk in there on that day. He picked that day specifically. Because after Denmark Vesey was turned in by some other blacks and the rebellion failed, the whites burned that church to the ground. So the church that you see now was rebuilt after the Civil War. They rebuilt that church. So as soon as I saw that church, this was even before they caught Dylan Roof, I knew it had something to do with Denmark Vesey.
Wow, that's deep.
No. And one of the people that were killed, I think, was related to my wife. The older gentleman who was the retired reverend, I think he was related to I think he was a cousin of my mother-in-law. So.
Yeah, that was a real hurt piece there when that happened. But I'll let you continue. I'll go even deeper. So I'm gonna let you go. Let the host go ahead. Go ahead.
Tony, what's our time? How much time do we have? You know.
We're at 25 minutes.
All right. We're going to go into our slave narratives. Sister Lorraine's going to read a narrative. Let me give you a little bit of history on that. She's going to read one. I'm going come right after her with a narrative. These slaveries are in the Library of Congress. From the Federal Writers Project, 1936 to 38 contains more than 2,300 first-person accounts of slavery. These narratives were collected in the 1930s as part of the Federal Writers Project and the Works Progress Administration, later named Works Project Administration. At the conclusion of the Slave Narrative Project, a set of edited transcripts were assembled and microfilmed in 1941 as the 17-volume Slave Narrative, a folk history of slavery in the United States from interviews with former slaves. Sister Lorraine's going to read a slave narrative for you.
Okay. Slave narrative, Richard Toller. Richard Toller, 515 Polar Street, century-old former slave, lifted a bony knee with one gnarled hand and crossed his legs, then smoothed his thick white beard. His rocking chair creaked, the flies droned, and through the open, unscreened door came the brawling of a calf from the building of a high company across the street. A maltese cat sauntered into the front room, which served as a parlor and bedroom, and climbed complacently into his lap. In one corner, a wooden bed was piled high with feather ticks and bedecked with a crazy quilt and a number of small, brightly colored pillows. A bureau opposite was laden to the edges with a collection of odds and ends, a one-legged alarm clock, a coal oil lamp, faded artificial flowers, and a gaudy vase, a pile of newspapers. A trunk against the wall was littered with several large books, one of which was the family Bible, a stack of dusty lampshades, a dingy sweater, and several bushel basket lids. several packing cases and crates, a lard can full of cracked ice, a small round oil heating stove, and an assorted lot of chairs completed the furnishings. The one decorative spot in the room was on the wall over the bed, where hung a large framed picture of Christ in the temple. The 2 rooms beyond exhibited various broken down additions to the heterogeneous collection. Mr. Toller. I never fit in them was none sure and I couldn't. My belly's been broke. But I sure did want to, and I went up to be examined, but they didn't receive me on account of my broken stomach. But I sure tried, 'cause I wanted to be free. I didn't like to be no slave. That wasn't good times. I never had no good times till I was free. I was born in Master Toller's, that's Henry Toller's plantation, down in Old Virginia, near Lynchburg in Campbell County. My papa was a slave before me, and my mama too. His name was George Washington Toller, and hers was Lucy Toller. We ought our name for out of our, and we lived in the cabin way back of the big house. Me and my pappy and my mammy and 2 brothers. They never mistreated me neither. They's a whipping the slaves all the time, but I'd run away all the time. And I just tell them if they whip me, I'd kill them. And I'd never get a whipping. If I thought one was coming to me, I'd hide in the woods. And then they sent after me and they say, come on back, we won't whip you. But they killed some of the niggas, whipped them to death. I guess they killed 3 or 4 on Toller's place while I was there. I never went to school. Learned to read and write my name after I was free in high school, but they never allowed us to have a book in our hands. And we could not have had no money neither. If we had money, we had to turn it in to our owner. Church was not allowed in our pad neither. And go to the Methodist church now every day ought to go. I think religion must be fine because God Almighty at the head of it. I never could understand about ghosts. Never did see one. Lots of folks tell them about seeing ghosts, but I never fear them. I never raised up that such superstitious believings. We was never allowed no patties, and when they gone on at the big house, we had to clear out. I had to work hard all the time, every day in the week. Had to mend the cows and the calves, and when I got older, I had to hold to it in the fields. Master Toller had about 500 acres. So they tell me, and he had a lot of cows and horses and oxen, and he was a big farmer. I had done about everything in my life. Blacksmith, stonemason, carpenter, everything but bricklaying. I was a blacksmith here for about 36 years. Learned it down at Toller's. I stayed on the plantation during the war and just did what they told me. I was 21 then, and I walked 50 miles to vote for General Grant at Vane's Place precinct. And I voted for him in 2 sessions. He run twice. And I was 21 the first time, because they come and got me and say, come on now, you can vote now, you is 21. And they know my age is right then, about as close as you can get it. I was close to the battlefront, and I seen all them famous men. Seen General Lee and Grant and Abe Lincoln. Seen John Brown, and seen the 7 men that was hung with him. but we wasn't allowed to talk to any of them. Just look on in the street, just spoke and say how to do. But I did talk to Lincoln, and I told him I wanted to be free. And he was a fine man, because he made us all free. And I got an old history. It's the Sanford American History. Was published in 1784. But I don't know where it is now. I misplaced it. It is printed in the book. Something said, now written by hand. And it says, I'm an old slave which has served for 21 years, and I would be quite pleased if you could help us to be free. We thank you very much. I trust that someday I can do you the same privilege that you are doing for me. I have been a slave for many years. After the war, I came to Cincinnati and was married 3 times. My first wife was a Mamie. Then was Molly. They both died. And then I was married to Kara, and I had 6 children, 1 girl, 4 boys. They 2 living yet. James is 70, and he's not married. And Bob's about 30 or 40. I done lost all my memories. Too old now. But Molly died when she was born, and he is crazy. He is out at Longview, a home for mentally infirm, now for a while, and he just wanders around and works a little. He's harmless. He wouldn't hurt nobody. He ain't married. After the war, I bought a fiddle, and I was a good fiddler. Used to fiddle it for the white girls to dance. Just picked it up. It was a natural gift. I could still play if I had a fiddle. And used to play home downs too. Played all those old time songs. Soldier's Joy, Jimmy Long, Josie, Arkansas Traveler, Black Eyed Susie. I remember that. Hold to that one, the words to that one. Black Eyed Susie, you look so fine. Black Eyed Susie, oh, you think you're mine. Your wonderful time we's having now. Oh, Black Eyed Susie, I believe you're mine. And way down, we stomp around the bush. We think that we get back to the we could push. Black Eyed Susie, I think you fine. Black Eyed Susie, you know you mine. Before the war, we never had no good times. They took care of us, though. As particular with slaves as with the stock. That was their money, you know. And if we claim being sick, they give us a dose of castor oil and turpentine. That was the principal medicines colored folks had to take. And sometimes salts. But never no whiskey. That was not allowed. And if we was real sick, they had the doctor for us. We had very bad eating. Bread, meat, water. And they fed it to us in a trough, just like the hogs. And I went into my shirt till I was 16. Never had no clothes. And the floor in our cabin was dirt. And at night we just take a blanket and lay down on the floor. The dog was superior to us. They would take the dog in the house. Wow. Some of the people I belonged to was in the Ku Klux Klan. Tala had 4 girls and 4 boys. Some of those boys belonged. And I used to see them turn out. They went round whipping niggers. They get young girls and strip them and stock naked them and put them across barrels and whip them till the blood runs out of them. And they would put salt in the raw paws. And I see it. And it was as bloody around them as if they struck the hogs. I sure is glad I ain't no slave no more. Oh, thank God that I lived to pass the years until the day of 1937. Wow. I was happy and satisfied now, and I hopes all y'all see a million years to come.
This is the slave narrative of Susan Merritt. I couldn't tell how old I is, but does you think I'd ever forget them slave days? At least I'm about 87 or more, because I was a good-sized gal spinning all the threads for the white folks when they let us loose after surrender. I was born right down in Rusk County, not long way from Henderson, and Master Andrew Watt is my owner. My pappy, Hob Rollins, he come from North Carolina and belonged to Dave Blakey, and Mammy come from Mississippi. Mammy had 11 of us children before she dies when they babies. Before dies when they was baby, but Albert, Hop, John, Emma, Anna, Lula, and me lives to be growed and married. Now, Master Watt lived in a big log house, was set on a hill so you could see it round for miles, and us lived over in the field in little log huts, all huddled along together. They have homemade beds nailed to the wall and baling sack mattresses, and us call them bunks. Us never had no money, but penny clothes and grub, and wear the same clothes all year round. Master Watt made our shoes for winter himself, and he made furniture and saddles and harness and run a grits mill, and a whiskey still there, right there on the place. That man had everything. Now the hands was woke with the bit bell, and when Master pulls that bell rope, the niggas fall out them bunks like rain falling. They was on that field for a day and stay till dusk dark. They work slap up till Saturday night, and then washes their clothes, and sometimes they get through and has time for a party and plays. Right, plays? I remember parts of the words to one of those plays. Rolling river, roll on, no old cow dying, cold water. Now we got to drink bad water, 'cause the old cow dying, cold water. But I can't remember no more than that. It's been too long. Now when the hands come in from the field of dust stock, they has to tote water from the spring and cook and eat and be in bed when that old bell rings at 9 o'clock. About dusk, they call a chillin' and gives them a piece of corn pone about the size of my hand and a tin cup of milk and puts them to bed. But the Grove folks add fat pork and greens and beans and such like and have plenty of milk. Every Sunday, Master give them some flour and butter and a chicken. Lots of niggas caught a good cowhide for slipping around and stealing chicken on Sunday. Now, Master Watt didn't have no overseer, but he had a nigger driver. Well, it's just as bad. He carried a long whip around the neck, and I seen him tie niggas to the tree and cowhide them till the blood ran down onto the ground. Sometimes the woman gets slothful and not able to do their part, but they make them do it anyway. They dig a hole about body deep and make the woman lie face down in it and beats them nearly to death. The nigger driver beat the children for not keeping up the cotton row with the head man. Sometimes he make niggas drag long chains around the works as long as they work the fields, and some of them ran off. But they oughtn't to have done it, 'cause they chase them with the hound and nearly kill him. Lots of time Master Watt give us a pass to go over George Petro's place to see, or Dick Gregg's place. Master Petro run a slave market, and he had big high scaffold with steps where they sell the slave. They were stripped off to the waist to show their strength. Now our white folks have a church and a place for us in the back. Sometime at night I gather around the fireplace and pray and sing and cry. But us dared not allow our white folks to know it. Thank the Lord us can worship where us wants to nowadays. Us have 2 white doctors called Dr. Down and Dr. Gil Shaw will wait on us when we real sick. Us wear asafoetida bags around the neck and it kept off the sickness. Now I stay most of the time in the big house and Master good. But Missy am the devil. I couldn't tell you how she treated me. Lots of times she tied me to a stub in the yard and cowhound me till she give out. Then she go and rest and come back and beat me some more. You see, I was Master's nigga, and she had her own niggas that come up on her side, but she never did like me. She stomped and beat me nearly to death, and they have to grease my back where she cowhided me, and I was sick with the fever for a week. If I had $1 for every cowhide I get, I'd never have to work no more. Now, young Missy, Betty, liked me and tried to learn me reading and writing, and she slipped to my room and had me doing right good. I learned the alphabet, but one day Missy Jane catch her schooling me and she say, niggas don't need to know anything. And she lams me over the head with a butt of a cowhide whip. Whew, that white woman so rough. One day I was making soap, and some little chickens get in the fire around the pot, and she say, I let them do it, and make me walk barefooted through the bed of coals several times. Now, I hears about freedom in September, and they's picking cotton, and a white man rides up to Master's house on a big white horse, and the houseboy tell Master a man want to see him, and hollers, like, stranger. It's a government man, and he had a big book and a bunch of papers and say, why ain't Master turning the niggas loose? Master say he trying to get the crop out, and he tell Master, have the slaves in. Uncle Stephen blows the cow horn, what they used to call the eating, and all the niggas come a running, 'cause a horn mean come to the big house quick. That man reads the paper telling us we's free. But Master make us work several more months after that. He said we get 20 acres of land and a mule. But we didn't get it. Lots of niggas was killed after freedom, 'cause the slaves in Harrison County turned loose right at freedom, and them in Rusk County wasn't. But they hears about it and runs away at freedom in Harrison County, and their owners have them bushwhacked. That means shot down. You can see lots of niggas hanging in a tree in the Seabeam bottom right after freedom, 'cause they catch them swimming across the Seabeam River and shoot them. They sure am gonna be lots of souls crying against them in the judgment. Whew. So those are two slave narratives in the book. Whew.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful.
We're still here.
There you
Yes. There was one part, well, there's several parts, but in Toller's,
I like the part where they made him go vote.
yeah, that's what I want to talk
Yeah,
about.
they made him go
I mean,
vote.
what year was this?
I don't know what year it was, but he said, as I was 21 then, and I walked 50 miles to vote for General Grant at Vaughan's precinct. I vote for him in 2 sessions. He run twice.
That would be 1868, the presidential election of 1868, and then 1872.
Come on. They voted.
Right.
Slaves voted.
No, they weren't slaves at that time.
Oh, that's right.
The war is over.
Okay, the war's over.
Grant wins the 1868. That was the first election after the war.
But then they took our right to vote away again?
Right. We
Yeah.
were disenfranchised with the fall of Reconstruction.
Going into Jim Crow.
Really?
That's what Jim Crow was about. That was after Reconstruction.
Right.
See, when she says they was killing the black folks, that was during Reconstruction,
Okay.
which
Wow.
was right after the war.
Right.
And that's when black people could vote and black folks were winning elections, and
Yeah.
that's when they had Wilmington, North Carolina, where the whites got mad because the black people were elected to power in positions, and so they got mad and they had a quote-unquote riot.
Who was the one who disenfranchised us? What made them say, okay, you can't vote?
Well, what happened was, as Kaka was saying, we had significant political power after the war, the Reconstruction period, when we got our right to vote. We used our vote intelligently, far more intelligently then than we do now. Right? We didn't just send people in who look like us and say, we just trust you to do. No, you went in with an agenda to overturn all those negative laws against black people and to establish public works programs so that we can get paid for our labor and those type of things. And so white folks were very upset about that. And the Republican Party lost its commitment to supporting and defending black power in the South, because even during Reconstruction, you had these paramilitary groups like the Klan and other people killing people, and the Republican Party lost its resolve and nerve and backed away from it, from Reconstruction. And at that point, that's when the Hayes-Tilden Compromise of 1877 came into effect. The presidential election of 1876 was a referendum on Reconstruction, whether it would continue or not. The Republicans and the Democrats cut a deal. It was a very close election between the Republican, Rutherford B. Hayes, who we voted for, and the Democrat, Samuel Tilden. And it was a contested result. The Southern Democrats felt like they won the election, and the Republicans thought they won. Hayes won by 1 electoral vote. Tilden had more popular votes. So there was a constitutional crisis because the Democratic Party said, we're not going to allow these election results. We're not going to honor them, so there won't be a president. You're right. That's what the threat was. So they got in behind closed doors and cut a deal. And the deal was the Democrats would allow Hayes, the Republican, to be president, but he would have to agree to, number one, pull out all remaining federal troops from the South and give the southern states home rule, meaning there would be no intervention by the federal government in southern race relations.
Wow.
Which meant we were at the total mercy of our former slave masters who wanted revenge. So the end result of that is our voting rights were taken away. You know, Jim Crow segregation was imposed on us. Legally, economically, we were put into sharecropping, convict labor, and of course lynching and other forms of racist violence. That whole period from 1877 to like 1915 or so is called the nadir, the lowest point. And in some ways, it was worse than slavery.
Wow.
Right? Because at least as a slave, you were the property of somebody. So people don't just purposely damage or kill their property. Just making them money. But when that nadir came, it was open season on our people. That's why so many of our people are living in Pittsburgh and New York and Philadelphia. That's what they were fleeing, those conditions. That's what they were trying to get away from.
And this is when the Klan was at its height, terrorizing people.
Right. But no, one thing about it, the Klan was defeated. And there was a man by the name of Robert Brown Elliott from South Carolina, a congressman, who actually set up the Ku Klux Klan trials. And the Ku Klux Klan had to go to Washington, and they were convicted and broken up by the government. Right.
Wow.
So the Klan was out by 1871, at least as an organization, but other organizations stepped into the void and took their place and kept up. The most violent organization against the black people in the South was the Democratic Party. Right?
Yes.
The Ku Klux Klan was a wing of the Democratic Party.
Look that up.
Yeah, I know. One time we were Republicans.
Yeah, when we came out of slavery, we were
because it was the party of Lincoln.
Right.
There's a YouTube, the history of the Democratic Party. There's a YouTube program. Watch that, and you will learn that it was the Democrats who championed chattel slavery, not the Republicans. We all voting Democrat now. Look at their history.
Well,
do your
it's
homework.
Changed since then.
We flipped over
with
what, Franklin Roosevelt?
Right, the New
That
Deal.
when black folks
the New Deal.
went over. Now, you know, this was something, Rashid, I don't know if you knew this or not, and I just found this out, but during the 1930s, during the rise of fascism, that there were powerful people in this country that plotted to overthrow the U.S. government
take out
Roosevelt and put this general in office because they felt that Roosevelt betrayed, because Roosevelt came from money. He was an aristocrat. He came from an aristocratic family, but he was for the average man, the everyday person. So they felt betrayed, and they wanted to overthrow him and put an American general in office because they thought the U.S. needed a dictator like Hitler,
Mussolini.
like Mussolini, like the guy in Spain,
Franco.
And I never heard about that, and I got on the internet and looked it up.
No doubt.
And my question is, why weren't they, because this was a known thing, evidently, they're writing about it now, why weren't those people rounded up and shot for trying to overthrow the U.S. government? And the reason is because they were J.P. Morgan, they were the Rockefellers, they were the rich people in this country, and the bankers, The same people that supported Mussolini, the same type of people that supported Hitler. And they thought they could control Hitler. You know, when you saw what happened, they put him in office and they couldn't control him because he had his own agenda. But
Like
these
the one that
people in the
supports
U.S.
Like the one who supports Putin.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But all I know is they should have been lined up and shot as traitors because they actually plotted to overthrow the United States government, which I had never heard before until last week. So I got on the internet and started researching.
Wow.
And the government, at least the White House, was overthrown about 30 years later with the assassination of John Kennedy, the last true American president we've had in this country.
Now, why do you say that?
Yeah, right.
He's the last one who was independent of that deep state and actually moved against it.
Okay.
Right? That's a whole different show.
Yep.
Okay.
But everyone who's come after him has been under the control of those forces that took Kennedy out.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you don't go along with them, they'll show every president who gets elected that Zapruder film of what they did to Kennedy. You don't want that to happen to you. You got to do what we tell you to do.
Wow.
Every last one of them, all the way up to Trump.
I'm up to believe you.
You better believe it.
I'm gonna do the research. Wow. I love it. I love
But you were
knowledge.
familiar with this, Rasheed? I had never heard about that.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, it's documented who the general was that they were going to put in office because they
yeah?
felt that they could control him the same way they thought they could control Hitler.
What year was that?
This was,
That was 1930s.
was this his first election?
Yeah, I think it was 32, 33, something like that.
Because he took over for Hoover. So they felt that the United States needed a strong man. They needed a dictator.
Right.
Just like this guy thinks he's a dictator now. That's what they thought the U.S. needed. Because you got to remember, 1929 was the Wall Street crash. You know, so everything was bad economically. So they felt, they saw what Hitler did in Germany. They saw what Mussolini did in Italy, and he seemed to right the ship. So they said, well, we need a dictator too. So they actually started plotting and planning to overthrow the United States government.
And before that, the government was overthrown with the assassination of Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln.
Because it was a clandestine organization called the Knights of the Golden Circle. Now, you ain't never heard about them, but they're the ones who orchestrated the killing of
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Right.
Wow.
At the gold.
And there's been 4 presidents who have been assassinated. We just know 2 of them, but there's 4 of them.
Who's the other two?
Garfield and McKinley, I think, yeah.
All right. I'll go for it. Well, we only have a few moments left. Thank you, Brother Rasheed, for blessing us with your presence and
we have to do this
teaching
again.
us. Oh, we definitely will. We definitely will. It's been enlightening. Of course, thank you, Kaka Bruce.
Yes, ma'am.
Always a pleasure, and Sister
ma'am.
Lorraine.
Anytime.
I hope our
Because we learn a lot through this
from each
process.
other. Yeah, of course. And I hope our audience, our viewers enjoyed the show. This is installment 4. We have continuous programs to go on. Brother Rasheed, I'm sure will join us again. Sister Lorraine, you have anything to say?
No, I just want to say thank you both. I've learned a lot today. I mean, I have multiple notes.
I saw you taking notes.
I mean, I definitely felt like I was being schooled today. So not only have I learned some things, I hope that this program was just as encouraging to our listeners. And this is how we must learn about our history, and we must keep our history viable. As you say, we must tell our own history.
No doubt.
And never knew anything about, the takeover, and the nadir,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got some work to do.
Oh, yeah.
I got some work to do, and
Don't
thank
we
you.
all?
Thank you very much.
Yes. So that concludes installment 4 of Know Thyself, an African American Poetic Journey. The book is available at Ujima Collective. Check it out. You can learn your history through poetry. And with these programs, you learn a little bit more from the professors. Yeah, we intend to keep on teaching. We intend to save our people, and we intend to continue to lift up our race through truth and knowledge. So with that, I'll say peace and blessings, and have a good evening.
All right.
Wow.